Hey, greetings YouTube, Captain Machine here, back for another video. I've been spending the last couple of days recovering from a virus that's going around at the moment. And I've just been watching my first ever Google Hangout video. I wasn't partaking, I didn't think it was polite to just barge in. I didn't really have anything to say to the conversation anyway, but it did inspire me to do more videos and do more stuff for you guys. And in that regards, before I go to bed, I looked through my inbox and I found a question I recently been sent, which I really want to answer. At the same time, I also want to make the promise that anyone that has sent me a question in the past, I will respond to. If it's in my inbox, I will respond to it with a video, and if there's any more up here in the future, I will respond to them with videos. If they're short questions, then generally speaking, they'll be amalgamated into one video. So, Lucas Cardoso, if I've said your name wrong, I really am sorry, asked me a question in regards to a fantasy/40k crossover. Warhammer fantasy/Warhammer 40k crossover in relation to Followers of Chaos. He's given me 4 questions in regards to this, because he's been talking about this with his friends and such and so forth with the local gaming group. It's a great question because I've actually spoken to people about this before, and I do have my own opinion on it, and maybe I might do it in the future. I don't know, depends. First things first, before we get started on the actual questions, if you're going to do it, it doesn't matter about the system you use. If you're using the Warhammer Fantasy system, use Warhammer Fantasy system. If you're going to use Dark Heresy or the 40k Universe system, whatever you want to call it, use that instead, whichever you're more comfortable with, because the two adapt to each other really well. I'm, of course, talking about 2nd edition Warhammer Fantasy, not 3rd, which is such an alien system, I haven't even played it yet. So, that is by the by, and if you play something alien to those two, like GURPS or Savage World, then it's not even an issue. But let's get down to the 4 questions. First question, are the gods in the world the same? And I would say yes. There is only one exception to this. Within the Warhammer 40,000 universe, you can attribute the birth of Slaanesh to one particular moment in time. And before that moment in time, Slaanesh did not exist. Right? That is the only difference between the fantasy and the 40k gods, because they have the exact same principles, the exact same litany, the exact same portfolio, to use the D&D terminology, and there is no difference between them at all. Can Followers of Chaos survive in the warp? Right, okay, this is interesting because I'm going to explain what I think the warp is within the canon as I understand it, and then I'm going to try and answer it. The warp to the fantasy universe is a hellish, nightmarish alternative reality where magic is all that exists. There is no time, no space, no matter. There is just magic. And even the facade of physicality that exists within the Chaos Waste, which is heavily polluted by the warp, breaks down to its absolute bare minimum, or nothing. So if you end up in the warp, you're dead. In the 40k universe, the warp is much more intrinsically important thing to the universe because you regularly travel through it via a spaceship, and if you're a psychic, you tap into it on a regular basis for your energy and your powers. And in that, being outside of a Geller field, which is basically the 40k equivalent of a MacGuffin, which basically protects your ship, and if your Geller field goes down while you're in the warp in a ship, you've got literally seconds to get out of the warp, because after that your ship is toast, because whatever crazy matter is energy, thought is reality, blah blah bullshit that goes on in the warp starts going on your ship, and you've got literally seconds to get out of to get your Geller field A back up, or B, get out of the warp. And even in that scenario, you've still got a slew of demons on your ship to deal with. There are exceptions to that depending on which race you're talking about, but that's the general consensus, at least where humans are concerned, and they're the ones most likely to worship chaos. However, despite the fact that in both scenarios you really, as far as the canon is concerned, can't survive in the warp, there are several canonical examples of beings being stuck in limbo-like voids or strange, unrealistic planes of existence where they're experiencing unusual and bizarre things which could technically be considered the warp, and they come out of it relatively fine. I mean, Darkblade's a fantastic example. If you've read Darkblade, either the comic or the novels, he you could argue that it's several times Darkblade goes into the warp, and he comes out relatively fine. Horus could be argued goes into the warp at one point and comes out relatively fine. So, generally speaking, if you want it to be survivable, make it survivable. But make it strange and weird and unusual. Make it obvious that there is something not right about this place. And don't just be subtle about it. Be obvious about it. You know, if it has to rain pudding, make it rain pudding to let people know they're in the warp. Right. I just asked a question. What would be the logical reason to mix these two settings? The most logical reason to mix the two settings is possibly, if you go back to the earliest incarnations of the canon, already there for you. Although, given the fact that GW does not like to reproduce its stuff, and this is before the internet became a thing, it's really hard to find this stuff, and you really have to talk to old guard to find out about it more than read it per se. But the common consensus in the oldest literature for Warhammer 40,000 and the fantasy is that they are the same place. And that the Warhammer universe, the Warhammer world of fantasy that we know, is in the Imperium of Man. It's just a lost world we haven't found yet. And all the wizards and all the elves and all the rest, that's all just warp stuff. Like, the elves are probably Eldar, the dwarves are probably squats, the humans are humans, obviously, the orcs are orcs, because orcs are everywhere. Demons are demons, blah blah blah. And Sigmar was a Primarch. And the reason why he disappeared is because the Emperor come and took him. And gave him his own legion, and then he's one of the stricken off legions which you don't know about, which is why you don't know who the Primarchs for those lost legions are. So that's the popular consensus, is they are the same thing. While I've never played any game like this, I have heard people tell stories where games like this can work, and it works really well if you think about it. I mean, there's been a really good examples of people playing games where they're in a Imperial spaceship or whatever, and they crash land on a planet because something goes horribly wrong in the warp, and they open up the door and there's a guy with a banner with a twin-tailed comet on it, holding his javelin lance at arm's reach, going, "Pray tell, man of metal, what are you doing in these lands of Sigmar?" You know, something as stupid as that. And then you've just basically got the stranger out of time scenario, which is classic in itself. Because not only do you have that immediate moment of power where you think, "Ah, I am awesome because I have a bolt gun and you have nothing," compared to that. You immediately get humbled by the fact is there are certain things that you're used to which you can't do, but everyone else in the universe can do easily. And the opposite is true if you did it the other way around. And finally, he said, what is the most likely outcome of this? And I believe, again, he's relating to the idea of Followers of Chaos. So he's probably talking about either Black Crusade or the fantastic Tome of Corruption for 2nd edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. If you collect that game line, collect Tome of Corruption. It's a great book. Basically, as it stands at the moment, I think the most likely outcome for Followers of Chaos to meet each other, regardless of setting, is chaos. To expect absolute chaos. They may agree with each other, they may disagree with each other, they may ignore each other. Although I would argue the most likely outcome is they try and kill each other. And it doesn't even matter if they worship the same god. Two Slaneshi types might walk into each other and go, "Oh, I don't know, maybe if I kill this opponent, I should become a more perfect warrior." Or, well, we all know that Khorne cares not where the blood flows, and, well, Nurgle worshippers might think, well, I could probably try and give this guy a disease he's never seen before, see if he can survive it. And then Tzeentch guys, well, Lord only wants to know what the Tzeentch guys think, but there you go. In fact, there is actually a canonical example of this in the Warhammer 40,000, in the Warhammer Fantasy setting. There is the Libris Chaosium book, I think that's what you call it. And they did 4 of them, one for each god. And the Khorne one has a chaos artifact in it, right? Which apparently some Chaos Knight went into the Chaos Wastes and came back with, and he says, "I have acquired this demon blade, and I call it a chain sword." And it is, you look at the picture, it's a chain sword. Granted, it's got some groovy carvings of demon maws on it and such and so forth, but it's a chain sword. It's described within the text as having this magical rune, which when you press it, it makes it roar like a demon, and it chews through flesh like a rabid creature through you know, like we cut through meat. It's a chainsword. And to a primitive individual, it's probably demonic because it roars when you press this button, which is a magical rune of some kind, and it chews through flesh like you've never seen before. And that's just one example in canon where these two worlds have already met. So I say if you're going to do it, have at it, because you're going to have a lot of fun with the idea. See you later, guys.